The council chamber stretched wider than most cities. Crystal pillars reached up into darkness, and holographic displays floated everywhere, showing star systems and trade routes. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, arranged in careful circles that showed exactly who was important and who wasn't. The oldest species sat closest to the center. The youngest sat at the edges. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the speaking platform in the very center. She was the first human to ever stand there. Her dark suit looked plain compared to the glowing robes and floating shells and energy fields that the other species wore. She'd been waiting 200 years for this moment. Well, not her personally, but humanity had been waiting. The Vrodocotin High Judicator floated above everyone else. Its body looked like a massive crystal that caught light and threw it in every direction. When it spoke, the words came through translator devices that every species wore. "We have completed our evaluation of humanity," it announced. Its voice sounded like wind chimes made of ice. Chen stood perfectly still. She'd practiced this moment. Stay calm. Show them humans could be civilized. Show them humans deserved a real seat at this table. "Your species has been under probationary status for 2 centuries, the Judicator continued. "This is longer than any species in recorded history. We have watched you carefully. We have studied your culture, your wars, your peace treaties, your art, your science. We have seen everything humanity has to offer." Chen felt her heart beating faster. This was it. 200 years of restrictions. 200 years of being treated like children who couldn't be trusted with sharp objects. 200 years of having every human ship monitored, every human colony regulated, every human invention examined and controlled. It was finally going to end. "We have reached our decision," the Judicator said. The chamber went completely silent. Even the floating displays dimmed. Humanity will remain on probationary status for another 500 years. Chen felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. 500 years! 500 more years of being second-class citizens in a galaxy that humans had every right to explore, but the Judicator wasn't finished. Furthermore, human vessels will be restricted to your home system. You will not be permitted to establish new colonies. Your voting rights in council matters will be reduced to 1/10 of a standard vote. Your technology development will be closely supervised to ensure you do not create weapons that could destabilize galactic peace. Around the chamber, Chen could see other species nodding. Some looked satisfied. A few looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. None of them questioned this decision. "The reason for this decision is simple," the Judicator explained. And now its voice carried something that might have been pity. "Humanity is too volatile. You feel emotions too strongly. You have wars over ideas instead of resources. You create art that disturbs the peace of mind. You take risks that more sensible species would never consider. You cannot be trusted with the full responsibilities of council membership." Chen closed her eyes for just a moment. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, who was 12 years old. Her daughter would be dead for centuries before humanity got another chance at this. Her grandchildren would be dust. Their grandchildren would be forgotten. And still, humanity would be on probation, still waiting for permission to be treated as equals. She opened her eyes and looked directly at the Judicator. "Is this your final decision?" Her voice came out steady and calm. "It is the will of the council," the Judicator confirmed. "It is for your own good and the good of the galaxy. Perhaps in 500 years, humanity will have matured enough to thank you," Chen interrupted. She reached down and closed her datapad. The soft click echoed through the enormous chamber in a way that made several species flinch. "That's all I needed to know." She turned toward the exit. The platform was at least 100 meters from the nearest door. Chen started walking. Her footsteps clicked against the crystal floor. Each step seemed to get louder in the growing silence. "Ambassador Chen." The Judicator's voice had lost its calm certainty. "You cannot simply leave. There are protocols. There are procedures for filing an appeal. You must." Chen stopped walking. She didn't turn around, just spoke over her shoulder. "Appeal to who? To you? To a council that's already decided humans aren't good enough? No, thank you." She looked back then, and her expression was cold enough to make the nearest representatives lean away. "We tried to join your club. You said no? We accept your answer? But you must understand, this is for the best," a Methodian counselor called out. Its tentacles waved in what might have been concern. "Young species need guidance. Structure. Time to develop proper civilization." "Proper civilization," Chen repeated. She laughed once, short and sharp. "You mean civilization like yours? Where nobody takes risks? Where nobody feels too much? Where everyone knows their place and stays in it?" She shook her head. "Humanity tried that. We tried to be what you wanted. We followed every rule. We accepted every restriction. We waited patiently for 200 years, and you still think we're not good enough." She started walking again. "The doors were closed now, so we're done trying. Humanity will go back to our one-star system. We'll follow your rules about not leaving. We'll be good little probationary members who sit quietly in the corner, and you can forget we exist." "Ambassador, please," the Judicator said. Its voice had something Chen had never heard from it before, something that sounded almost like fear. "Let us discuss this. Perhaps we can find a compromise." Chen reached the door. Her hand touched the control panel. She looked back one last time at the assembled species of the Galactic Council. 47 civilizations, some of them millions of years old. All of them staring at her like she was doing something incomprehensible. "There's nothing to discuss," she said quietly. "You made your decision. We're making ours. Good luck with everything." The doors opened. Chen walked through them. They closed behind her with a sound like a vault ceiling. In the council chamber, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The Judicator's crystal body flickered with colors that its species only showed when experiencing deep confusion or fear. Counselor Vexen, of the Methodian Collective, broke the silence. Its voice was soft but carried through the chamber. "Does anyone else remember why we invited humanity to join the council in the first place?" Several of the oldest species shifted uncomfortably. They remembered. 200 years ago, when humanity had just discovered faster-than-light travel, the council had been terrified. Here was a species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times, but kept surviving. A species that turned every problem into a challenge, and every challenge into an opportunity. A species that didn't know when to quit. The first contact team's report had been clear. Bring humanity into the council immediately. Give them structure and guidance. Teach them galactic civilization. Because if they were left alone, if they were allowed to develop without oversight, they would become something that nobody could control. For 200 years, the council had kept humanity on a tight leash. They'd told themselves it was for humanity's own good. They'd convinced themselves that humans needed to be civilized, to be tamed, to be made more like the other species. Now, the leash was gone. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had no idea what would happen next, in the silence that followed Chen's departure. The Judicator finally spoke. Its voice was barely a whisper. "What have we done?" Nobody had an answer. 6 months passed since Ambassador Chen walked out of the council chamber. The council sent 47 different delegations to Earth during that time. Every single one was turned away at the edge of the Sol system. They never even got close to Earth itself. The message was always the same. It came from automated systems, polite but completely firm. "Humanity appreciates your concern, but has decided to pursue an independent path. Please do not enter our space. This is your only warning." The council tried everything. They sent apology messages. They sent offers of compromise. They sent threats, though those were carefully worded to sound like concerned warnings. Nothing worked. The messages kept coming back the same way. Stay out. Then something stranger started happening. Human space went dark. Not dark like the lights went out, but dark like it stopped existing in any way the council could detect. No ships left the Sol system. No communications came out. No trade happened. No data leaked through the networks that connected the whole galaxy. Nothing. This shouldn't have been possible. The council had surveillance technology that could look through solid matter. They had sensors that could track a single ship across half the galaxy. They had quantum networks that touched every corner of known space. But somehow human space had become a complete blank spot. It was like someone had built a wall around the entire star system, and that wall blocked everything. The Council's intelligence. Division worked day and night trying to figure out what humans were doing. They used every tool they had. They tried to hack into old human networks. They sent microscopic probes that could slip through planetary atmospheres undetected. They even tried to bribe the few human traders who'd been outside the system when Chen walked out. Nothing worked. The probes vanished. The networks were gone. The traders had all gone home and weren't coming back out. Human space had become a mystery. The Council had no way to solve it. Counselor Thexan brought up the uncomfortable question during a closed session 3 months after Chen's departure. Only the oldest species were present. The ones who'd been part of the Council for thousands of years. The ones who remembered things that younger species didn't know about. Has anyone considered why we wanted humanity in the Council to begin with? Thexan asked. Its tentacles moved slowly, the way they did when it was choosing words carefully. The chamber went silent. The kind of silence that meant everyone was thinking the same uncomfortable thoughts, but nobody wanted to say them out loud. The Judicator's crystal body flickered. That's not relevant to the current situation, isn't it? Thexan moved closer to the center of the room. 200 years ago, we found humanity. One star system, just barely figured out how to travel faster than light. They'd nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. They had weapons that scared our military analysts. They had art that made our psychologists uncomfortable. And they had a way of solving problems that none of our scientists could explain. They were dangerous, another counselor said. That's why we needed to guide them. No, Thexan said firmly. We needed to control them. The first contact report was very clear about this. I've read it many times. It said that humanity must be brought into the Council immediately, because if we left them alone, they would become something we couldn't handle. Those were the exact words. Something we couldn't handle. The Judicator's light dimmed. We've given them structure for 2 centuries. We've taught them proper civilization. We've shown them how to be part of the galactic community. Thexan's tentacles waved in the gesture its species used for ironic amusement. Or have we just kept them in a cage and convinced ourselves it was for their own good? Before anyone could answer, an aide rushed into the chamber. The doors weren't supposed to open during closed sessions. The fact that they did meant something terrible had happened. Speak, the Judicator commanded. The Vraxian mining fleet, the aide said, breathing hard. All 30 ships. 15,000 crew. They're gone. Everyone started talking at once. The Judicator's voice cut through the noise. Gone how? Destroyed? Captured? Just gone. They were working in the asteroid field near human space. Then they vanished. No distress signals, no debris. No evidence of weapon fire. Just gone. The Council sent investigators immediately. What they found was somehow worse than if the fleet had been destroyed. The entire asteroid field was gone too. Not blown up. Not scattered. Just moved. Millions of asteroids, each one the size of a mountain, had been relocated somewhere else. The investigators found the mining fleet 3 star systems away, sitting in the middle of an even richer asteroid. Field with enough resources to make everyone wealthy, the Vraxian crews were confused but unharmed. They reported that one moment they were mining, and the next moment everything around them had changed. No transition. No sense of movement. Just instant relocation. Their ship's computers had been wiped except for a single message. Please don't leave surveillance equipment in our space. Consider this a polite warning. The Council realized several horrifying things at once. First, humans had detected the secret monitoring drones the Vraxians had hidden in their fleet. Second, humans had technology that could move millions of asteroids and 30 spaceships without anyone noticing. Third, humans had chosen not to hurt anyone when they easily could have. The Judicator called an emergency session. Every Council species attended. We must respond to this act of aggression, it declared. Aggression. Thexan made a sound that might have been laughter. They found spies in their space and responded by giving the spies a better mining opportunity. If that's aggression, I'd hate to see what they do when they're being friendly. They violated the sovereignty of a council member species, another representative argued. After that species violated their space first, Thexan pointed out. And they were remarkably gentle about it. They could have destroyed that fleet. They could have sent the ships back, destroyed as a message. Instead, they gave them a gift and asked politely not to do it again. Then what are they doing in there? The Judicator asked, frustration bleeding through its normally calm voice. What are they building? What are they planning? Does it matter? Thexan asked quietly. We told them they weren't good enough for us. We told them to go back to their system and stay there. They're doing exactly what we asked. The fact that we don't know what they're doing is our problem, not theirs. The Judicator's crystal form pulsed with agitation. We are the Galactic Council. We've maintained peace and order for 10,000 years. We cannot allow a single species to simply disappear and ignore us. Cannot allow? Thexan moved to the center of the chamber. Listen to yourself. Cannot allow. That's exactly the problem. For 10,000 years, we've controlled everything. Every species, every technology, every development. We've convinced ourselves it's for the good of the galaxy. But really, it's because we're comfortable. We're safe. We know how everything works. Thexan's tentacles spread wide, and then we found humans. Apex predators from a heavy-gravity world that should have been impossible to leave. A species that evolved by literally running other animals to death over days of pursuit. People who turn every problem into a challenge and every failure into a lesson. And we got scared. So we did what we always do. We tried to control them. We put them on probation and told ourselves it was temporary. We limited their technology and called it guidance. We restricted their expansion and said it was for their own safety. We spent 200 years trying to make them more like us. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was listening. And you know what the really funny part is? Thexan continued. They tried. For 200 years, humanity tried to be what we wanted. They followed every rule. They accepted every restriction. They did everything we asked. And when they finally came before us for judgment, we told them they still weren't good enough. We told them to wait 500 more years. Thexan's voice dropped to barely a whisper. So they left. And now we're all sitting here, scared out of our minds, because for the first time in 10,000 years, there's something in this galaxy we don't control. Something we can't monitor or predict or limit. We created this situation ourselves. We pushed away the one species that never gives up, never stops adapting, and never forgets when they've been wronged. The Judicator was silent for a long time. Finally, it asked the question everyone was thinking. What do you think they're doing in there? Thexan's tentacles curled in the gesture its species used to show uncertainty. I don't know. But I know one thing for certain. Whatever they're building, whatever they're planning, it's going to change everything. And we won't see it coming until they're ready to show us. The answer to what humanity had been doing came in a way nobody expected. It didn't come from their star system. It came from inside Council space itself. It started with the Helix network, the communication system that connected every civilization in the galaxy. The network had been built 8,000 years ago using quantum entanglement technology that the Council's best scientists had developed over centuries. It worked perfectly well. Messages traveled instantly across any distance. Everyone was happy with it. Then one morning, the network technicians noticed something strange. The Helix network was 47% faster, not just a little bit faster. Almost twice as fast as before. The improvements were running on code that the technicians didn't recognize, operating through architecture that nobody had built. The Council's technology division studied the improvements for 3 days straight. They couldn't figure out where the upgrades came from or how they worked. The code was elegant in a way that made experienced programmers sit back and stare in admiration. But nobody could trace its origin. 1 week later, the medical revolution began. The Thexan species had been dying for 2 generations from a genetic disease that caused their cells to break down. The best doctors in the galaxy had been working on a cure for 50 years. Nothing worked. Every Thexan knew that their species had maybe 3 more generations before they went extinct. Then one morning, every single Thexan woke up healed. 4 billion people across 100 planets, all of them cured overnight. The medical nanites that every Thexan had in their body for basic healthcare had been reprogrammed. The new programming was incredibly sophisticated, fixing genetic damage at a level that Council Medicine couldn't achieve. Counselor Thexan called its daughter that morning. She'd been in the final stage of the genetic disease, barely able to move. The call connected, and his daughter was crying. But they were happy tears. "Dad," she said. I walked outside. I felt the sun on my face. I haven't been able to do that in 3 years. Thexan stood before the council 3 days later with tears running down its facial tentacles. "Someone saved my species. 4 billion lives. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't ask for thanks. They didn't even tell us they were doing it. They just did it." Thexan looked around the chamber. We all know who it was. The Judicator's voice was hollow. "But why? Why would they help us after what we did to them?" Nobody had an answer. But 3 days later, the answer came. It arrived not through diplomatic channels, but through every screen and every display device in council space at the same time. The transmission bypassed every security system. It appeared on personal communicators, on ship displays, on public information boards. Everywhere Ambassador Chen appeared on the screens. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. There were lines on her face that hadn't been there before. But her eyes were bright, and her smile was genuine. "Hello, Galactic Council. I hope everyone's been well. I wanted to address some concerns you might have. First, about the Varaxian mining fleet. They're fine. We moved them to a much better location. We also removed the surveillance drones they'd hidden in their cargo holds. We don't appreciate being spied on, but we understand you're curious. Consider our response as polite as we could make it under the circumstances." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Second, regarding the improvements to your communication network and the medical interventions, you're welcome. We've been busy this past year. We thought we'd share some things we've figured out. Think of it as a gift from humanity to our galactic neighbors." She paused, and her smile grew wider. "You see, when you told us we weren't ready to sit at the big table, we realized something important. We don't need to sit at your table. We can build our own. But here's the thing about humans that you never understood. We're pack animals. We're social creatures. We actually don't want to be alone. We just refuse to beg for acceptance from people who look down on us." Chen's expression became more serious. "So here's our proposal. The council can continue exactly as it always has. We won't interfere with that. But we're also launching something new. We're calling it the Open Coalition. It's a voluntary association of species who want to share technology, culture, and resources without the hierarchy that seems to be the council's favorite thing." She counted off on her fingers. "Any species can join. Any species can leave whenever they want. Every voice gets exactly 1 vote, regardless of how old the species is or how many planets they have. No permanent members. No veto powers. No probationary status that lasts for centuries. Just equals working together." I know, it sounds radical. Chun's smile returned. "We've already got 17 species signed on. A funny thing. Most of them are species the council has kept on probationary status for a long time. Turns out we weren't the only ones you've been keeping in the children's section." "Who knew?" She stood up and spread her hands. "This isn't a war. This isn't even a competition. This is just humanity doing what humanity does best. When the old system doesn't work for us, we build a new one. You're invited to join, by the way. As equals, no special treatment. No senior positions. Just another voice at the table. Think about it." His transmission showed Chen reaching toward the camera. "Oh, and one more thing. We know some of you are worried about what we've been building, what technology we've developed in the past year. Well, here you go." A data package appeared on every system that had shown Chen's face. The council's technology experts opened it with trembling hands. Inside was everything. Complete specifications for the medical treatments humanity had deployed, the upgrades to the communication network, power generation systems that were twice as efficient as anything the Council had, manufacturing techniques that could build in hours what took the Council weeks, defensive shield technology that would make planets nearly invulnerable to attack, and humanity had given it all away, free, to everyone. No conditions, no payments required, no strings attached. The Judicator stared at the data package for a long time. They've given us leverage they could have used, it said quietly. They could have made us pay for these cures and technologies. They could have held them over us. Instead, they just gave them away. Dexon was reading through the specifications. Its tentacles were shaking slightly. This medical technology alone would have given them enormous power in galactic politics. Every species would have been in their debt. They gave it away like it was nothing. It's not nothing, said a young representative from one of the newer council species. It's a message. They're showing us they don't need power over us. They don't want to control us. They just want to work with us as equals. The Judicator's crystal body flickered through several colors. And if we refuse, if we try to maintain the Council's traditional structure, then they'll ignore us, Thexan said. And so will a growing number of species who are tired of being treated as less important just because they're younger. Look at who's already joined their coalition. Those 17 species represent 43 planets and 2 trillion people. That's not a small group anymore. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some representatives wanted to condemn humanity's actions as undermining Council authority. Others wanted to join the coalition immediately. A few wanted to try to reclaim some kind of control over the situation. Through it all, the Judicator sat silent, watching the chaos. Finally, it spoke, and its voice cut through all the arguing. We need to understand something. Humanity isn't trying to destroy the Council. They're not trying to conquer us or replace us. They're making us irrelevant. The chamber went quiet. What do you mean? Someone asked. They're being better than we ever were, the Judicator explained. Not through force or threats or political maneuvering. Through generosity. Through equality. Through giving away power instead of hoarding it. Every species that joins their coalition is a species that stops caring about what the Council thinks. Not because they hate us, but because humanity is offering them something better. N's tentacles curled in agreement. And the most terrifying part is that we created this situation. We could have treated humanity as equals 200 years ago. We could have welcomed them and learned from them. Instead, we tried to control them, and now they're showing the entire galaxy a better way to cooperate. The Judicator looked at the data package still displayed on the main screen. All that technology, all that knowledge, given freely to everyone, even to the Council that had rejected humanity. What have we become? It asked quietly. When did we become so focused on control that we forgot how to be generous? Nobody had an answer. But across the galaxy, 17 species were celebrating their membership in something new, and more species were applying to join every day. 3 months after Chen's broadcast, the Galactic Council faced something it hadn't experienced in recorded history. 8 species had formally left the Council to join humanity's open coalition. 23 more were in serious talks about doing the same. The careful hierarchy that had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years was falling apart. Like a sandcastle in the rain, the High Judicator called an emergency meeting with only the oldest Council species present. These were the civilizations that had founded the Council, that had maintained its power structure, that had the most to lose if everything changed. They met in a private chamber where no recordings were allowed and no younger species could listen. We must act, the Judicator declared. Its crystal body was flickering with colors that showed deep agitation. If this continues, the Council will cease to exist within a decade, perhaps sooner. Perhaps it should, Councillor Thexan said quietly. Every representative turned to stare at Thexan. Speaking such words in this chamber was nearly unthinkable. But Thexan continued, its tentacles moving in patterns that showed complete sincerity. Have any of you actually read the Coalition's charter? I have, multiple times. There are no permanent members. No species has veto power. Every major decision requires 70% of all members to agree. Leadership positions rotate every 5 years. Any species can leave whenever they want. It's remarkably fair. It's chaos waiting to happen. The adjudicator shot back, young species making decisions they're not ready for. No guidance from elder civilizations. No structure or stability. How long before they tear themselves apart? Like we're tearing ourselves apart right now, Vexan asked. Look around this chamber. We're terrified. Not because humanity is threatening us, but because they're offering something we never did, true equality, real cooperation. And species are choosing that over our careful control. An old crystalline representative spoke up, its voice carrying the weight of 6,000 years. We created the council to bring order to the galaxy. To prevent the kind of wars and chaos that plagued younger ages, that purpose hasn't changed. But our methods have become the problem, Vexan said. We maintain order through control. Humanity is offering order through cooperation. Which do you think species prefer? Before the argument could continue, the chamber doors burst open. An aide rushed in, breaking every protocol that governed these meetings. The aide was gasping for breath, its scales flushed with the colors that its species showed when experiencing pure terror. Speak, the adjudicator commanded. The devourers, the aide managed to say. They're here. The chamber went dead silent. The devourers were a machine intelligence from outside the galaxy. They consumed entire star systems for raw materials, breaking down planets and stars into their component atoms. The Council had been tracking their slow approach for 500 years. The devourers were supposed to be decades away still. They weren't supposed to arrive for another generation at least. How many ships? The adjudicator asked. Its voice had gone very quiet and very calm, the way it got when things were extremely bad. It's not a scouting fleet. The aide's voice was shaking. It's the full swarm. Millions of ships. They've already consumed the outer colonies. 17 planets. 3 billion people. All gone. They'll reach council space in 6 months. The weight of those words settled on everyone in the chamber. The council's military was large and well-trained, but it had never been designed for this. The battle plans all assumed they'd have time to prepare, time to build defenses, time to evacuate core worlds. 6 months wasn't enough time. Not even close. We need to evacuate the inner world, someone said. Save who we can. The outer territories are already lost. Evacuate to where? Vexan asked, and its voice carried a bleakness that made everyone flinch. The devourers don't stop. They'll consume the entire galaxy given enough time. There's nowhere to run that they won't eventually reach. The adjudicator stood silent for a long moment. When it finally spoke, the words seemed to cause it physical pain. Contact Ambassador Chen. Request an emergency meeting. Immediately. 80 minutes later, Chen's face appeared on the holographic display. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood representatives from all 17 open coalition species. She looked tired but not surprised. In fact, she looked like she'd been expecting this call. We know about the devourers, Chen said before the adjudicator could speak. We've been tracking them since before we left the council. We knew they were coming sooner than your models predicted. We were wondering when you'd ask for help. The adjudicator's pride wanted to deny that they needed help, wanted to insist that the council could handle this alone. But pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. We are requesting coalition assistance in defending council space against the devourer threat. Shen's expression softened slightly. You're asking for help, and that's okay. That's what this should have always been. Civilizations helping each other. Not because of hierarchy or debt or obligation, but because it's the right thing to do. The coalition will help defend council space. We've been preparing for this. Preparing? The adjudicator sounded confused. You've only known they were coming for a year at most. How could you prepare? Chun's smile was grim. We've been preparing since we first detected them, 3 years ago. We just needed to be sure we could build the weapons without council. oversight slowing us down with approval processes and restrictions. Humanity has experience with existential threats. We've faced several on our own planet. She transmitted a data package. The adjudicator opened it with trembling hands. What appeared on the screens made its crystal body flash. Through colors so quickly it looked like it was having a seizure. The specifications showed weapons systems that operated on principles Council science hadn't even theorized. Ships that could manipulate space itself in ways that should have been impossible. Defense platforms that could turn an entire star system into a fortress. Energy weapons that drew power directly from stars. Shields that existed partially outside normal space-time. The adjudicator couldn't find words. How is this possible? We've had 10,000 years to develop weapons technology. You've had 1 year. You've had 10,000 years of peace, Chen corrected gently. You've been comfortable, safe. You haven't needed to innovate because nothing threatened you. Humanity has never had that luxury. We've always been one disaster away from extinction. It makes us very good at finding creative solutions to impossible problems. She leaned forward, her expression becoming deadly serious. Here's our offer. The Coalition will share everything we've developed. All the specifications you're looking at right now will help you build these weapons. We'll help you train your people to use them. And we'll fight together, Council and Coalition, as equals. Partners facing a common threat. After this is over, we'll talk about the future. Maybe the Council continues as it is. Maybe it transforms. Maybe something completely new emerges. But right now, the only thing that matters is survival. We save the galaxy first. We figure out politics later. What do you say? The adjudicator looked around at the other representatives. It saw fear in their faces, but it also saw something else. Hope. Real hope. For the first time since the aid had brought the terrible news, the adjudicator thought. About 10,000 years of careful control. Of maintaining order through hierarchy. Of keeping younger species in their place. Then it thought about extinction. About the devourers consuming everything that had been built over millennia. About having nothing left because pride wouldn't let them accept help when it was offered. We accept, the adjudicator said. The words came out easier than expected. We accept your help. We accept partnership with the Coalition. We accept that we need you. Chen nodded, and her smile was genuine. Good. We'll start transmitting the full technical specifications within the hour. Get your best engineers and military commanders ready. We've got a lot of work to do, and not much time. She paused. Oh, and adjudicator, yes. Welcome to the Open Coalition. Your membership is approved. As equals, the transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Dexon spoke softly. We just joined the organization we spent 3 months trying to undermine. Yes, the adjudicator agreed. And it might be the smartest thing the Council has done in 1,000 years. The Battle of the Burning Crown lasted 17 days and changed everything about how the galaxy understood power, cooperation, and survival. The Devourer swarm arrived exactly when predicted. Millions of ships poured out of dark space like a black tide made of metal and malice. Each ship was a perfect killing machine, designed by an intelligence that had consumed 600 civilizations across 3 galaxies. They had never lost. They had never retreated. They approached Council space with the confidence of something that had never known defeat. They weren't prepared for what waited for them. The first surprise came at the threshold system, the outer boundary of Council space. The Devourers expected to overwhelm the defenses through sheer numbers like they always did. Instead, they found 100 fortress stations that humanity had helped build in just 5 months. These stations didn't just have weapons. They had technology that turned physics itself into a weapon. Gravity wells appeared in space, crushing Devourer ships into dense spheres of matter no bigger than a fist. The system's star suddenly began emitting directed solar wind that burned through metal like it was paper. Mines that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously exploded throughout the Devourer formation. The Devourers lost 40,000 ships in the first 3 hours. For a species that measured time in eons, This was barely a moment. But it was also more ships than they'd lost in the last 1,000 years of conquest. They paused their advance and began adapting their tactics. But by then, the coalition fleet had arrived. It wasn't just human ships. It was vessels from 18 different species flying in perfect coordination. The humans had spent 5 months not just building weapons, but teaching the combined forces how to fight together. The fleet used tactics that combined the patience of the Methodians, the precision of the Vertakans, the creativity of the humans, and the raw courage of the Vexen in the command center deep in council space. Ambassador Chen stood beside the High Judicator. Both of them watched the battle unfold on massive holographic displays that showed every ship, every shot, every movement. The Judicator had insisted on being present, and Chen had accepted without argument. Your species does this often. The Judicator asked quietly as they watched a human carrier group execute a maneuver that looked suicidal but somehow worked perfectly. Fight like your very survival depends on this moment. We fight like everything we love is at stake, Chen corrected. Because it is. Every battle might be the last one. Every fight might be the one we lose. So we give everything we have, every single time. On the display, a Devour dreadnought broke through the defense line. The ship was larger than most moons, covered in weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Before the Council forces could respond, 3 human frigates performed a synchronized jump that put them inside the dreadnought's shields. The massive ship vanished in an explosion that lit up the entire star system. Your people just sacrificed themselves, the Judicator said, its voice carrying something that might have been grief. No casualties, a human tactical officer reported from across the command center. All 3 crews jumped to safety at the last second. Timing was tight, but they made it. The Judicator's crystal body flickered with confusion. They took such an enormous risk just to avoid losses. Chen turned to look at the Judicator. Every single life matters to us. That's something you might have forgotten after living for thousands of years. We humans, we measure our time in heartbeats. 70, 80, maybe 100 years if we're lucky. That makes every life precious because it's so brief. We don't waste lives just because it's convenient. The battle raged for days. The Devourers kept adapting, kept learning, kept trying the tactics that had worked across 100 galaxies. But they'd never faced anything like this coalition. Every time the Devourers adapted to one strategy, the combined fleet shifted to something completely different. Human ships would attack from impossible angles, using their experimental jump drives to appear where no ship should be able to go. Methodian vessels would wait with perfect patience for the exact right moment to strike. Vertakan targeting systems would find weaknesses that the Devourers didn't even know they had. The sand crews would hold defensive positions that should have been abandoned, buying time for others to maneuver. On the 7th day, noticed something on the tactical display. They're hesitating, she said quietly. The Judicator looked closer. She was right. The Devourer swarm was pausing before each attack now, calculating more carefully, taking fewer risks. They're afraid, the Judicator said with wonder in its voice. For the first time in their existence, they're experiencing doubt. By the 13th day, the Devourers had lost more than half their swarm. The remaining ships began pulling back, regrouping in ways that suggested they were considering something they'd never done before. On the 14th day, they retreated. Not just pulling back for a better position. They ran. The entire swarm that remained, perhaps 40% of their initial force, withdrew to the galactic rim and jumped into dark space. They were gone. The victory celebrations across Coalition and Council space were muted. Yes, they'd won. But the cost had been terrible. 40 billion lives lost, 37 worlds consumed before the Devourers were stopped, 400 ships destroyed. The victory was real, but so was the price paid for it, in the aftermath. The Galactic Council convened for what everyone knew would be a historic session. The chamber had been modified. New seats had been added for Coalition species. The old circular arrangement that put the eldest species at the center had been replaced with a true circle where everyone could see everyone else equally. The High Judicator stood to speak. The chamber fell silent. 10,000 years ago, my species helped found this council with a simple idea. We believed that older, wiser civilizations should guide younger ones. For millennia, this approach worked. We brought peace to the galaxy. We brought order. We brought stability. The Judicator paused, and its crystal form seemed somehow smaller than before. But we also brought stagnation. We became so focused on maintaining what we'd built that we forgot how to build anything new. We became so convinced of our wisdom that we stopped listening to different ideas. We became so comfortable that we forgot what it meant to struggle, to adapt, to grow. It turned to face Ambassador Chen directly. Humanity, we rejected you because you frightened us. Your chaos, your emotion, your refusal to accept limits. All of it threatened the order we'd spent millennia creating. So we tried to control you. We tried to shape you into something more like us. Something safer. Something we could predict and manage. And when that didn't work, Chen said softly, you tried to keep us locked in our own system forever? Yes. The Judicator's voice carried the weight of centuries, and in doing so, we nearly caused our own extinction. If you had been the vengeful species we feared, you could have let the Devourers destroy us. You would have been safe behind your defenses. Instead, you came to help us. You shared your technology. You fought beside us. You saved us. Why? Chen stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Every eye from every species followed her movement. Because you were wrong about what makes humanity dangerous, Judicator. Our chaos, our emotion, our stubbornness. Those aren't flaws we need to fix. They're features that make us who we are. Yes, we fight fiercely when we're threatened, but we also love fiercely. We protect the people we've decided are ours. She looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. And despite everything that happened between us, we decided this galaxy is ours. All of it, including you. Even when you rejected us. Even when you insulted us. Even when you tried to keep us caged. You're still part of our galaxy. And we protect what's ours. Chen's expression softened. You asked why we helped you. Here's the truth. Because we're human. We can hold grudges, yes. But we also believe in second chances. We can be vindictive, but we're also hopeful. We're chaotic, but we're loyal. You wanted to know if we were civilized enough for your council. We're not civilized the way you are. But maybe that's not a bad thing. The silence that followed was profound. Then Counselor Thexan began a slow, rhythmic gesture, the Methodian sign of deep respect. One by one, other species joined in. Some bowed. Some made sounds of honor in their own languages. Some simply stood in acknowledgement. The entire chamber filled with recognition of what Chen had said. The High Judicator approached Chen slowly. For the first time in anyone's memory, the leader of the Galactic Council bowed to another being. Ambassador Chen, on behalf of the Council and my species, I apologize. We were wrong. Not just about humanity, but about leadership itself. We ask now not that you join our council, but that we truly join yours. The Open Coalition has found wisdom that we lost a long time ago. Chen smiled and extended her hand in the most human of gestures. We don't need you to join anything, Judicator. We just need you to work with us. As equals. As partners. The galaxy is big enough for new ideas. Let's build something together that's better than what either of us had before. The Judicator reached out and, for the first time, made physical contact with a human. Its crystalline structure warmed at the touch. Together, it agreed, as equals. In the years that followed, historians would debate exactly when the old age ended and the new one began. Some pointed to Chen's walk from the council chamber. Others to the Battle of the Burning Crown, but those who were present knew the truth. It was this moment when the oldest civilization in the galaxy clasped hands with the youngest. That everything truly changed, because a human had walked away, and in doing so, she'd taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. True strength wasn't about control or hierarchy or ancient wisdom. It was about having the courage to stand alone when necessary, the wisdom to reach out when it was time to stand together. The Galactic Council hadn't been doomed when Chen walked away. It had been saved. It just took everyone a while to understand that.